Hello everyone, welcome to my workplace. This excavator is a very robust machine, yet due to constant usage, some parts will inevitably wear out. This is not really a problem, those parts are easily replaced, but the damage will eventually spread out if not closely monitored. A filter which is not replaced in time might ruin a whole engine. This is why we recommend a daily routine of system checks, which guarantees that the machine will always stay in a good working condition. Note that my colleague has parked the machine. The equipment is lowered to the ground to ensure there's no pressure in the hydraulic lines. The undercarriage is aligned with the upper carriage and the final drive is at the rear of the excavator. The excavator is parked on level ground and the excavator must be parked in this fashion at the end of each shift. Hi there, machine working okay?
Yeah, running smooth.
My colleague here hasn't noticed anything unusual during his shift, so we can start our inspection as usual. I will guide you through the process. Let's start with an overall visual inspection by walking around the excavator and looking for anything obvious. Our main focus is for leaks and collections of dirt, as well as loose or damaged parts. After the first inspection round, we have multiple parts to inspect on the undercarriage. First, we'll focus on the track system. Here, we have to differentiate between the different models of the Terex O&K excavator fleet. The larger models, starting from the RH120E, use an integrated track system, where the track pads and the chain links are one piece. In this case, you only need to check the pins and retaining bolts keeping the chain together. As you can see, there's a square nut constraining the pins in their bearings. If such a nut should be missing, the pin is likely to fall out, then the nut needs to be replaced. The smaller models use a standard track system, where the track pads are bolted onto the chain links. In this case, the chains have to be tested for loose track pads, which are fastened to the chain links. We call it the hammer test. With this hammer, I will now hit the track pads of every chain link. As you can hear, every stricken track pad produces the same sound. If a track pad produces a sound of a distinctly higher pitch, the track pad is likely to be loose. It has to be refastened or replaced. Repeat this with every track pad on both sides of the undercarriage. Now, we take a look at the wheels and rollers in the crawler frames. Again, you need to look for leaks. The excavator's driving gear works hydraulically. So, as with all other hydraulic components, you need to check for leaks. Since the gearbox is covered, it will suffice to look if there are any traces of oil leaking out of the hood. If that is the case, the hood has to be taken off for a closer inspection. The same goes for dents and deformations on the hood. If the deformation is substantially more than a mere scratch, part of the driving gear might also have been damaged. Here, you can see the position of the various hoses that should be inspected. As before, you are looking for dark, glossy spots or a collection of dirt, both indicators for loss of structural integrity within the hose. Hoses showing these symptoms should be replaced as soon as possible. Now, we turn our attention to the equipment, meaning the shovel, stick and boom. We check for lubrication on all the moving parts and all the hydraulic hoses as we did before. The hinge points in the equipment are permanently lubricated. So here, we want to see some of the lubrication leaking out. If you do not see some fresh grease leaking out of these connections, there might be something wrong with the automatic lubrication system. To prevent further damage, this should be looked into right away. Check all hinge points. All hydraulic hoses and lubrication lines should be inspected for leaks. If you need to change the position of the equipment in order to reach certain parts, please do so. Next, we will check the teeth of the bucket. They are supposed to sit tight. If they don't, they might cause damage to the bucket itself. To check if the teeth sit tight, you just have to step on them. To prevent further damage, loose teeth should be replaced immediately. The swing gear also needs to be checked for proper lubrication. You can tell that the automatic lubrication of the swing gear is working if you see some of the lubrication leaking out of the swing gear. If you don't see any lubrication leaking out, the automatic lubrication system should be checked right away. Insufficient lubrication can do a lot of harm to the swing gear. This completes our inspection of the undercarriage and the equipment. The good news is you won't need a lot of tools for this inspection. You will need a wrench, size 17 and 19 millimeters, and a cloth for the oil dipsticks. We start our inspection in the engine module. The inspection has to be thorough, of course, yet we don't want to spend too much time on it. I recommend a routine like this. First, we check the oil level of the pump drive gearbox with the dipstick. Wipe the stick clean and then just dip it in. Do not fasten it. If the level is between the markings, the level is okay. You can check the level of the oil reservoir for the pump drive gearbox pre-chambers through this sight glass. The level should at least be up to here. Next, we do a general visual inspection of engine parts, connections, hoses and pipes for adjustment, strength and tightness. You need to look for leaks identifiable through puddles and traces of oil. We'll have to do something about that. Hydraulic hoses also sometimes become leaky. These spots are easy to identify. They appear as glossy black spots on otherwise grey, dull hoses. Also, you can manually check on all the cables to see if all the fittings and clamps are tight. Of course, it is crucial to check if the engine has enough oil. Here we have another dipstick. The procedure is always the same. Take out, clean, dip, take a reading and refasten. If required, the water separator has to be emptied. The water cooler is also crucial to the lifespan of the engines. Here again, you want to look for leaks as well as a collection of dirt. This is what it should not look like. Then, we need to check the level of the hydraulic tanks through this sight glass. The level should at least be up to here. The last item on my list is an overall visual inspection. Once again, you should be looking for anything that might look conspicuous. Of course, the more experienced you are, the more likely it is to spot a problem right away. But, eventually, you will get to know your machine well enough to instantly see if there's something amiss. That's it for the left engine. Now we proceed to the right side. For the sake of efficiency, on the right engine, we will do the inspections in a different order. First, the water cooler. Engine oil. Visual inspection around the engine block. Releasing water from the water separator. Oil level in the pump drive gearbox. Level of the oil reservoir for the pump drive gearbox pre-chambers, and finally the overall visual inspection of the right hand side engine. Here you can see the inspection tour once again. Remember that if you find something not in order, it should be dealt with right away, or as soon as possible. Oil, as a rule, should be replenished right away. Leaky hoses and connections, as well as loose pipes and cables, should also be looked into as soon as possible. You never can tell if something is about to fail, which can cause unnecessary machine downtime. That's it for the engines. Let's move on to the oil cooler. In here, the main issue is to check for leaks and dirt. First, we start with an overall visual inspection, just like we did in the engine room. Once we're finished, we concentrate on the coolers themselves. This is the cooler for the hydraulic oil. Check it for leaks and a collection of dirt, which will prevent the cooler from working efficiently. It should not look like this. The same goes for the cooler for the gear lubrication oil. Just as in the engine room, leaks should be dealt with as soon as possible. Dirt should be wiped away or maybe blown away if you're equipped with an air compressor. Now we can take a look at the swing gearboxes. The RH120E has two swing gearboxes. In here, we need to check the level of the gear lubrication oil in both of them. These are the locations of the dipsticks. Same procedure as with all other dipsticks. The other one is right next to this one. Remember that if the oil level is below the mark, it will have to be replenished immediately. In older models, instead of the dipsticks, two expansion tanks are installed on the upper deck. They are transparent and can be used as level indicators. They should at least be filled up to this level. Once you have checked the levels of the gear lubrication oil, you can start with the overall visual inspection. Again, look for leaks and collections of dirt. When everything is okay, we can move on to the deck of the excavator. Time for some fresh air. We'll start this part of the tour with a visual inspection, especially paying attention to leaks or hoses with black or dirty spots on them. Both indicate that the hose could fail, so they need to be replaced. These are the areas where you look. Once you are through with the visual inspection, you check the following. Even though the function of the air filter is monitored electronically, the cleaning and replacing has to be done manually. First, you unscrew the lid and take out the outer filter. Depending on the environment, cleaning may be necessary on a daily basis. Repeat this procedure with all the filters. The next item on the list is the level of the engine coolant in the header tank. The sight glass indicates the level of the engine coolant. It needs to be replenished as soon as the level drops below the mark. The breather filters of the hydraulic tanks are next on our tour. On your way from one stop to the next, you should be looking around for anything conspicuous. This is also only a visual inspection. As long as there's no oil leaking out of the filters, they're okay. But if you see oil leaking out, they'll have to be replaced. This is what the filters would look like if they had to be replaced. At last, we have to check the level of the lubricating grease in the grease container. Please note that there are two different types of containers. Older models have a barrel type grease container, while newer models have a square type grease container. We check the grease level using a dipstick. Once again, all lubricating oils and coolants must be replenished as soon as they drop below the indicated level. Otherwise, there is a great risk that the machine may be seriously damaged. Now we can finally start the engines. The engine startup is actually a part of the daily routine inspection. The whole operating system, as well as vital engine and pump functions, are monitored through the BCS. Any error or malfunction will be reported by the BCS during startup. Additionally, some malfunctions are also displayed through control lights and analog gauges. The standard procedure to start up the engines is 1. Turn the key to on. 2. Toot the horn. You need to warn everybody that the machine is about to start moving. 3. Start the first engine. If the BCS doesn't report any malfunctions, 4. Start the second engine. If the BCS still shows no malfunctions, the machine is ready to operate. But you have to leave this comfortable chair once more in order to lift the boarding ladder. A series of simple moves to warm up your excavator. Move the machine out of the parking position and then operate the attachment using boom, stick and bucket functions. Move the attachment into the travel position, ensuring a balance of weight on the swing ring, and then travel back and forth. Swing approximately 90 degrees to both sides. So, that's it for your daily routine inspections. There are 3 more checks I'm about to show you. They are not intended to be carried out daily, but on a regular basis. All of this will help you to locate and predict trouble, and keep your excavator up and running for the longest possible time. Checking the bearing condition can be done from within the operator's cabin. First, you move the bucket to the ground. It must be sitting firmly on the ground. Then you slowly lift the boom. If the bucket moves slightly later than the boom, something must be done about the bearings. It would look like this. If you are not sure or you want to test further, you can also start to swing the upper carriage. If you can see the bucket swing slightly further than the boom and stick, the bearings definitely need to be checked. The pump test is not intended to be part of the daily routine inspection, yet it should be carried out on a regular basis. For this test, you will need an assistant. Okay, let's do this step by step. Step 1. Begin by starting only the left engine. Step 2. Your assistant has a can of spray paint ready and draws a line from the chain to the floor. Step 3. Now the equipment is being moved so that you can lift up this crawler frame by pressing down the boom. Step 4. Your assistant takes out his stopwatch and on his signal, you push the pedal down for this crawler frame. Your assistant notes the time it takes for the crawler to complete one cycle. Repeat this procedure on the other crawler frame, still using the left engine. Then stop the left engine and start the right engine. Repeat the procedure for both crawler frames using only the right engine. In the end, you have 4 readings. If all 4 match within limits, everything's fine. But if the readings for the left engine differ distinctly from those for the right engine, one of your pumps does not function properly. If all 4 readings differ distinctly, or maybe just those related to one of the crawlers, you may also have to look into your final drive. That's it for the pumps. For this test, you will also need 2 people. One who operates the excavator and one who will do the measuring. To measure the clearance of the swing bearing, we have to first move the excavator into position. We start with this position. Notice that the equipment is not supported, thus applying force to the swing bearing. To measure the clearance, we will use a tool which measures small changes in distances. When you have attached the measuring tool to the swing bearing, you have to set it to 0. The crawler frame should lift up to 500 millimeters. Then you can take a reading from your measuring gauge. Now, you repeat this procedure with the measuring tool being attached on the opposite side of the swing bearing, the equipment still facing the same way. Then you take the next 2 readings with the upper carriage swung around 90 degrees, and so on, until you have 8 readings. All of the 8 readings should be within the limits specified for your model of excavator. The swing bearing is a part of your excavator that will eventually wear out. This test will indicate when you can start thinking about ordering a new one. I would like to present to you a few basics of how to operate our excavator. Just in case you don't know them already, I'd like to quickly explain the controls. The pedals control the crawlers. There is 1 pedal for each crawler. Step down and the excavator moves forward. If you want to reverse, you push the rear of the pedals down. If you want to turn on the spot, you operate the pedals simultaneously in opposite directions. The right-hand lever controls the boom and bucket. Pushing the lever forward lowers the boom. Pulling it back raises the boom. Pushing out tilts the bucket open. Pulling in tilts the bucket closed. The left-hand lever controls the stick and swing functions. Pushing the lever forward moves the stick out. Pulling it back moves the stick in. Pushing out makes the upper carriage swing left. Pulling in makes the upper carriage swing right. Now that we know how to operate the levers and pedals, we can start working. The ideal position for the attachment when travelling is boom upright with stick and bucket folded in as far as possible. This way, the centre of gravity moves to the centre of the undercarriage. Also, you reduce the uneven stress on the swing gear. The final drive is at the rear of the excavator. Travelling uphill is also the same procedure. When you're travelling uphill, be sure that the final drive is at the rear of the excavator. You can use the attachment to balance the weight and gently tip the excavator over the hill crest. When travelling downhill, the final drive should be at the front in the direction you are travelling. This keeps the weight off of the idler wheels and the track tension system. Putting weight on the idler end might cause the track chains to jump off. The attachment is now used to balance the excavator. Now, let's talk about loading trucks. When digging, the excavator should stand on reasonably level ground and have safe footing. Pay attention that your undercarriage is not damaged. This is the ideal loading position. The excavator is located above the truck. The ideal digging depth is approximately the length of the stick, because it will efficiently use the machine's digging forces. When you start digging, always start at the furthest point away from the truck. Close in on the truck with every bucket you're loading. The loading cycle should also be used to provide an even, clean loading position for the next truck. When positioning the truck, the swing angle should be as small as possible. By any means, it should not exceed 90 degrees. When digging, you have to pay attention to the proper angle of ground penetration. If the bucket is tilted open too wide, you will lose braking force. If the bucket is tilted too closed, you will lose power and have premature wear of the bucket bearings. A good angle will ensure efficiency and minimal wear of the equipment. And when you empty the bucket, be sure to keep the distance to the truck as minimal as possible. That way you'll prevent unnecessary stress on the truck. Advantages of this method are good visibility into the truck and fast cycle times due to short hoist time. This is a very efficient method. Of course, it is also possible to load if you are on the same level as the truck, but you won't load as efficiently. Well, those are the basic things you need to pay attention to when operating an excavator.
This is Radio Puppeteers bringing you the best music for your line of facility.